toddobaadkii hore waxaa gobolka Virginia ee dalka Mareykanka lagu xidhay Kornayl Tuke oo ka mid ahaa saraakiishii ciidamada militariga ahaa ee dawladdii kaligitaliska ahayd ee Maxamed Siyaad Barre. Kornayl Tuke oo ahaa taliyihii qaybta shanaad ee ciidamada militariga Soomaaliya oo 80-aadkii fadhigoodu ahaa degmada Gabiley ee Somaliland ayaa loo haystaa dil, kufsi iyo jirdil uu geystay shacabkii loo diray inuu amnigooda sugo. Dadka uu xilliga falalka arxandarrada kula kacay waxaa ka mid ahaa Farxaan Warfaa Cali, kaas oo uu Tuke ku dhuftay 5 xabadood laakiin qadarka Ilaahay awgii badbaaday isla markaana ka baxsaday xabsigii uu gudihiisa dhaawacyada. Farxaan Warfaa oo aan hibataynaya dhibaatadii uu dadka u geystay Kornayl Tuke ayaa dacwad ka furay dalka Mareykanka oo uu dambiiluhu deganaanshiye ka helay wixii ka dambeeyay 1996. Dacwadda lagu oogay Kornayl Tuke oo muddo dheer jiitamaysay isla markaana marxalado kala duwan martay ayaa aakhirkii wuxuu Farxaan Warfaa oo gacan ka helaya garsoorayaal caalami ah ku guuleystay in xabsiga la dhigo Kornayl Tuke si loogula xisaabtamo dambiyadii uu geystay. Markii uu soo baxay warka xadhigga Kornayl Tuke waxaa dad kooban oo wax ku qiimeynaya sumadda qabiilku ay baraha bulshada ku wada xidhiidho ka bilaabeen hadallo ay ku muujinayaan inay ka soo horjeedaan xadhiggiisa. Dadkaasi qaar ka mid ah ayaa ku doodayay inaanu Tuke wax dembi ah lahayn balse qabiil ahaan loo bartilmaameedsaday. hase yeeshee maadaama oo ay weli nool yihiin ehelada dadkii uu dilka iyo dhaawaca u geystay Kornayl Tuke, waxaanu halkan idinku soo gudbinaynaa xog faahfaahsan taasoo sawir cad ka bixinaysa heerka ay gaadhsiisnayd dhibaatadii uu shacabka ku hayay Kornaylku wakhtigii uu xukumayay ciidamadii fadhigoodu ahaa Gabiley. Markhaatiyada weli nool ee kiiska Kornayl Tuke wax badan ka ogaa waxaa ka mid ahaa Axmed Muuse Madar oo xog waran siiyay telefishan caalamiya oo baaritaan ku sameeyay tacadiyadii uu Tuke ka geystay ayaa sheegay in Kornayl Tuke uu qudha ka jaray walaal oo lagu magacaabay Cabdi Muuse Madar. falkaasi arxandarrada oo markaasi ka dhacay magaalada Arabsiyo. Axmed Muuse arrimahan naxdinta leh ka warramaya ayaa waxa uu yiri.
Okay, thank you very much. And just for clarification's sake, we're referring to this as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Mr. Madar, do you identify with a specific Somali tribe?
I am a member of Isaac tribe.
Are you married?
Yes.
Do you have any children?
Yes.
And do you have any sons?
Yes.
How many sons do you have?
2 sons.
And how many daughters do you have?
9 daughters.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes.
How many siblings do you have?
2 and the one who was killed. At this moment I have 2 brothers and 5 sisters.
And the relative who was killed, was that a brother or a sister?
It was a man, he was a man.
And what was the name of your brother?
Abdi Musa Madar.
What was the Somali tribe of your brother?
We belong to the same tribe, the same tribe that I belong to.
And what's the name of that tribe?
Isaac.
What is your current employment, Mr. Madar?
I am a farmer. I do work in my farm.
Where's your farm located?
South of Arabsiyo, about 2.5 kilometers away.
How long have you been a farmer?
Since we returned to the country, since 1991, I was working in the farm.
And that's to the present day?
Yes.
What type of crops do you farm?
It's the corn, maize, the different foods. Those are the ones that I grew.
You mentioned that you returned to the country in 1991. Where were you immediately prior?
3 years prior to that, I was one of the refugees who were in Dolat.
When did you leave to go to Dolat?
1988.
And where is Dolat located?
It locates in Ogaden, the Somali Khalil of Ethiopia.
And were you in Dolat consistently from 1988 through 1991?
Yes.
Let the record reflect I'm showing the witness what has been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Yeah, if you know, can you identify on the map approximately where Dolat was located?
Yes.
Please mark it on the map.
It locates right there.
I'd like to ask if the videographer could zoom out sufficiently so he can see the map. Mr. Madar, once again, can you identify on the map where Dolat is located?
Yes, it's right there.
You mentioned that you fled to Dolat in 1988. Prior to fleeing in 1988, what was your employment?
I was a teacher and I started teaching in 80s.
And what age group did you teach?
Children, it was primary school, elementary school.
And do you remember the approximate year when you first began teaching?
80s.
Do you know approximately how many people lived in Arabsiyo at that time?
At that time, we had refugees from Ethiopia, and in estimate, it was about 10,000 people.
10,000 total people?
Yes, in estimate, 10,000.
Was there a dominant tribe in Arabsiyo at that time?
At that time, there were a lot of refugees, and the people who live in the area are a Soco tribe, but at that time they were dominated.
What was the name of the dominant tribe?
They bring there to the area Darod tribe.
And what about other than the refugees? Was there a dominant tribe at the time?
That was Soco.
Do you know the plaintiff, Farhan Mohammed Tani Warfa, in this case?
I know Farhan, I know his face, and I know his name.
When's the first time you met him?
We have known each other for 10 years now.
Do you know the defendant, Mr. Yusuf Abdi Ali?
I know by his nickname, if he is Tuke, yes, I know.
How do you know the defendant, Mr. Ali, also known as Tuke?
He was the one who was killing, and he was the commander of the army that were in Gebele area.
Do you know if Mr. Ali or Tuke had a job during the 1980s?
He was based in Gebele, and he was the commander of the army.
Do you know if Mr. Ali or Tuke was the commander of a specific brigade or section of the army?
I don't know, but I know that he was the commander of the army.
What was your understanding of his role in the Somali National Army at that time?
He was the one who was in charge of the army who were in that district at that time.
When you say army, are you referring to a specific army?
I'm talking about the Somali National Army who were in that area or in that district.
When you refer to that district, which district are you referring to?
Gebele.
And did you ever see Mr. Ali, also known as Tuke?
I saw him driving his own pickup car or with his soldiers.
Where did you see him?
He used to come to Arabsiyo, Gebele. I could see him all over the places.
You mentioned before, Mr. Madar, that you had had an elders meeting with the plaintiff in this case, Mr. Warfa. Can you tell us, were you participating in that meeting?
Yes.
And were you participating as an elder?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the Somali National Army?
Yes.
Were you ever a member of the Somali National Army?
Maya.
Were any members of your family associated with the Somali National Army?
My brother that was killed.
What year did your brother Abdi join the Somali National Army?
I think it was 76.
To clarify, that's 1976?
Yes.
How long did he serve in the Somali National Army?
Total from that time until 1988. You can add together.
So that would be approximately 12 years?
It's going to be about that, yes.
Talagu,
You can subtract from it.
Okay. What happened to your brother in 1988?
That's when when he was first captured. It was early of 1988.
And do you know his rank in the Somali National Army at the time he was captured?
At that time, he was third warrant officer.
Did you ever encounter the Somali National Army in Arabsiyo in the 1980s?
They were there, they were based there, they were all over the places.
Do you recall any specific actions that the Somali National Army took against the people of Arabsiyo?
It was captured in the area of Arabsiyo, 8 people, and they were all killed the same day.
Do you remember any general restrictions that were placed on the people in Arabsiyo?
There was a time that we were under curfew and we were ordered not to come out of our homes after 3 p.m. and at that time we couldn't bring in our goats and our chickens.
Do you remember when this curfew was imposed?
Yes, 87.
And did this curfew apply to everybody in Arabsiyo?
No, it was only particular to the Isaac people. The refugees were free.
Were there any other restrictions that applied to the Isaaq people?
Yes, for example, if you want to travel to Hargeisa, we were asked a lot of things, including ID, and those things were never asked of the refugee people.
Do you know who was imposing these restrictions?
It was coming from the top. It was coming from a group of people who were connected. It was Tuke and his superiors who were doing that. I don't know. It was Tuke and his people.
And why do you believe that they were targeting the Isaaq people?
Most of the time it was you joined SNM or you are supporters of SNM.
When you say SNM, are you referring to the Somali National Movement?
Yes.
And is the Somali National Movement different from the Somali National Army?
Yes, they were opposing, yes.
So what was the Somali National Movement?
They were opposition against Siad Barre's regime, and at the end they overthrew Siad Barre's regime.
Were you a member of the Somali National Movement?
No.
Turning your attention back to the targeting of the Isaaq, are there any other restrictions that you can recall?
Yes, there were restrictions on their business and their movement was limited. If they import cars, the government will take them away from them, and whatever that was look good, the government will take from them. Like the Land Cruisers, they were told that Isaac, they don't deserve Land Cruisers.
Do you recall what happened to your brother in 1988?
Yes.
What happened to him?
What happened was he was captured, tortured, burned, and at the end he was shot to death.
Do you remember when your brother was captured?
Yes.
Do you remember the date or time when your brother was captured?
The date was the end of the month that was the last of 1987 or the beginning of 1988, but it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Do you know who arrested your brother?
Somali National Army.
Do you know where your brother was taken after the arrest?
Yes, they took him to Gabile.
What was your understanding at that time as to why your brother was being arrested?
I do not understand anything about it.
Where was your brother at the time of the arrest?
He was at my mother's home, and that was 2.5 kilometers away from the town.
When you say the town, are you referring to Arabsiyo?
Yes.
Were any other members of your family arrested?
Yes.
Who was arrested?
Myself, my mom, my dad, my aunt, and 2 of my uncles.
So in total, including your brother, were 7 members of your family arrested?
Yes.
When were these family members arrested?
It was different times. My brother and my mom was arrested at 5 o'clock. And myself and my father, we were arrested 8 in the evening. And my 2 uncles and my aunt, they were arrested next day at 8 o'clock.
So did all the rest take place within approximately 24 hours?
Yes.
Where were you at the time of your arrest?
Our home in our hut.
Do you know who committed these arrests?
Somali Army.
And just to clarify, the Somali Army is the same as the Somali National Army?
Yes.
How were you arrested?
What happened was they came to our home, they knocked the door, they called my name, and then they brought me to the station.
Did they tell you why you were being arrested?
The other question they asked me was that, are you brother of Abdi Musa? And I said yes.
Can you describe how the people who arrested you were dressed?
They were wearing the dress of Somali National Army.
Can you describe that uniform?
It was this camouflage uniform that has the different colors: brown, green, black, those different colors.
What happened after you were arrested?
They kept us in jail, and after that they transferred us to Hargeisa.
Where were you taken after the arrest?
They took us to Hargeisa.
And how were you transported to that location?
They put us on the military cars that they used to call TM.
What happened after you arrived at the military base?
They put us in a room that was 1.5 meters this way, 1.5 meters the other way, and sometimes we were there 8 to 7 people. Sometimes they will take some people out at night and they will bring in some more. On average, most of the time we were between 7 to 8 people in that room. It was 1.5 meters each side.
Were you located in the same place as the rest of your family?
I was particularly there by myself. The other family members, they stayed in a different room that was a little bit bigger. It was 4 meters wide. I was the only one who was there from my family.
When you refer to your other family members, which family members specifically are you referring to?
It's my mom, my dad, my aunt, and 2 of my uncles.
And while you were held in that facility, did you see your brother?
No.
How long were you held in this military base?
2 months.
Can you describe the conditions there?
Other than it was overcrowded, we haven't seen any other thing. They did not provide us meals. Our family used to deliver meal once a day.
And how were you treated during your time in that military base?
Other than it was being overcrowded, there are any other problems that I can tell you individually.
How were other people treated that you were able to witness during your time at that military base?
There were people that they were taken out of the rooms by night. Either they were beaten, tortured, or killed.
At the end of your 2 months at this military base, what happened next?
One day they brought our brother at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He was on a car, and they called all of us. We did a roll call, and they put us on a car, and they bring us back to Gabile station.
When you refer to your brother, are you referring to Abdi?
Yes.
And when you referred to they, are you referring to, who are you referring to?
I'm talking about National Army, the soldiers we're talking about.
What exactly happened to you on that day when you left that military base?
When they removed us from that place, my brother was tied to the walls of one of the walls of the car, and I was tied to the other wall facing him.
Is that the first time you had seen your brother Abdi since his arrest?
Yes.
And can you describe what your brother looked like in that moment?
Yes. He was tortured and he has burns on his body.
Can you describe more specifically what you saw on his body?
I could see on his body that his body was burned, his skin was not there, and he had wounds on his body.
Can you describe what parts of his body had these marks?
He had wounds on his arms and his legs, and I could see his legs. He was wearing shorts that time, and he had some wounds on his face that I could see. It was not a lot, but mostly hands and legs.
And again, when you say wounds, can you describe in a little bit more detail what that actually looked like?
It was burning from burning.
And did you identify any other signs of trauma or distress?
He was very fearful and he knew he would be killed.
What about your brother's clothing? What did that look like?
It was rough, it was torn apart.
Can you describe how your brother was situated in the vehicle?
They tied him like this, the other wall of the car, that was the opposite side, and his hands were tied like this.
Were you tied in a similar manner?
Yes, the other side.
You mentioned before that it looked like, when you were describing your brother, that he looked fearful and thought he would be killed. Why did you think that?
Yeah, you could see from him, they already beaten him up, they hit him, and there's nothing left.
When you mean there's nothing, when you say there's nothing left, what do you mean?
What I mean is that what he has been through, death is way much better than that one. He has been through a lot already, and the death would be better.
What were you thinking in that moment?
I was thinking that we will be all killed. We all worried.
What happened after you were put in the vehicle?
They put us in a Gabile jail.
And is the Gabile jail, is that a different location than the military base?
Yes.
And what happened after you and your brother arrived at the Gabile jail?
We communicated there and we talked, we had conversation.
Describe what it looked like in the Gabile jail.
They put us in a big hall like the one that we are sitting right now, and they brought some more people. I do believe that we were a total of 31 people.
And could you describe the conditions of your detainment in that jail?
It was bad and difficult situation.
Did you see your brother during your detention in that jail?
Yes, we had a conversation. We were sitting next to each other.
In that moment, in that jail, what were you feeling?
I was worrying a lot. My feeling was worry.
How long did you spend in the Gabile jail?
2 days.
And did you see other prisoners during your detention there?
Yes.
Do you remember anything about those other prisoners?
Yes.
Do you have any specific memories?
Yes, I know the faces of a lot of people. I still remember their face. They were convicted and they were killed.
Do you know if these individuals were members of a particular tribe?
All of them were Isaac.
When you say all of them were Isaac, are you referring to, who are you referring to?
All the 31 people that we were together were Isaac.
How were you able to identify that they were Isaac?
The people were communicating and we were asking each other questions when they were brought to the jail.
After your 2 nights in the Gabile jail, where specifically were you taken?
They took us when they removed us from there, where they put us in court. It was somewhere in Arabsiyo and it was under a tree.
Were any other members of your family with you at that time?
All 7 of us who were being arrested, including my own brother.
And how did they transfer you from that jail to Arabsiyo?
They put us on a military car.
Were you all in the same vehicle?
Yes, we were on the same vehicle.
Do you remember what time, approximately, what time of day you were transferred to Arabsiyo?
I don't know the exact time, but it was sometime in the morning.
And the people that transferred you, what were they wearing?
They were wearing the military uniform.
Mr. Madar, I'd like to draw your attention back to the moment in time when you were being transferred from the Gabile jail to Arabsiyo. In that moment, what was your understanding of where you were going?
We had no idea until we get to Arabsiyo. They just transported us.
I'd like to draw your attention back to Arabsiyo. What did you see when you arrived at Arabsiyo?
What I saw was the table, the 4 men, and the people that were gathered who were there.
What were the people wearing?
They were wearing their normal uniforms.
Did you see anybody with any weapons?
The soldiers who were guarding us, the one who surrounded the area, yes.
I'd like to show the witness what has been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit Number 2. Mr. Madar, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I know this tree.
Can you please, Mr. Madar, can you please describe what you see in this image?
Yes, I can tell.
Please do.
Do you see the trunk of this tree there? That where we were leaning, myself, my brother, my father, and all our family members, we were leaning to this trunk. That is the place where the court was taking place. That's where they had the table. The people they gathered were standing there right behind us.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of how that spot looked in 1988?
Yes, it's that tree itself.
And just to clarify, that's a fair and accurate representation of what it looked like at the time he arrived in Arabsiyo.
It was exactly like that. We were leaning to the trunk of the tree. The people who were gathered were staying there over there. The soldiers were standing between us and the people that were gathered, and the court was this side.
Okay, Mr. Mudar, you can put the exhibit down now on the table. Mr. Mudar, I'd like to show you what has been marked as exhibit number 3. Do you recognize that document?
This tree and that tree, they are the same.
Can you please? Yes, thank you.
Put them here.
And I instruct the videographer to zoom in a way that allows the camera to see the document. Mr. Mudar, what is this image?
This tree and that tree, they are the same.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the site that you went to in Arabsiyo?
Yes.
Can you describe what happened at that site?
Yes.
So after you appeared at that tree, what's the next immediate thing that happened?
The court decision happened.
Was there any proceeding?
We could not describe as a court hearing. We cannot say it was court hearing.
How would you describe it?
I could describe as a four men who were there, who read something, who were asking questions, and they were answering the questions by themselves without an attorney present.
Where were you standing at the time?
Right next to the trunk of the tree.
And where were the men that you're referring to standing?
They were sitting right there on that side. That side, that's where they were sitting.
Can you please hold up the picture and indicate where?
They were sitting right there, those there.
And what were they doing?
They read something, and what they were reading was not any evidence or any proof that was there that they were reading.
Where was your brother at the time?
We were all sitting there. He was.
Did your brother have the opportunity to present any evidence?
He spoke only one time, and that one time he said, "I am not guilty of what you are telling."
Were any lawyers present at the proceedings?
No.
Did your brother have a lawyer?
No.
What happened next?
What happened, myself, my mom, and my dad, we were told that we are innocent, but my brother is guilty and he will be shot right away.
Do you know who was responsible or in charge?
I don't know.
What happened next to your brother Abdi?
They shoot in front of us before we could take even 2 steps, before we could walk away from the tree.
Who took him?
The soldiers who were there, who were surrounding us.
What were the soldiers wearing?
They were wearing soldiers' uniform.
Can you describe the uniform?
That was the camouflage uniform for the soldiers.
And when you refer to soldiers, can you please, if you know, state the affiliation of those soldiers?
Soldiers for the Somali National Army.
What happened immediately after they took your brother?
They tie him to a place where they prepared before, near where the water runs, and they shot him.
And could you see all of this with your own eyes?
Yes, I could see with my own eyes.
How far away were you at the time?
I do think it was not more than 100 meters.
Was that at the time of the execution?
Yes.
Let the record reflect I'm showing the witness what has been marked as plaintiff's exhibit number 4. Mr. Matar, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Can you please describe this image?
Yes. The tree over there is the tree that I was talking about. It's that tree there.
Let the record reflect that he's pointing to the tree in exhibit number 3.
That's that tree. That was they did the hearing, and that's the valley, and that's the wall of the valley where they tie him when they were shooting. The long wall is about 4 meters. It's tall. It would be like that, and in some areas it's as high as 5 to 6 meters. They tie him to that wall. We were left from there and we walk into that direction, and then they tie him in that location, and that's where they shot him.
Who was tied to that wall?
My brother.
Who shot him?
Many soldiers who were members of the Somali National Army at the time.
Mr. Matar, where were you standing at the time of that execution?
I was coming down to the valley. I was coming from there.
And when the execution took place, where were you standing?
I was right there at the side of the valley, and I was about 100 meters away.
And what happened after your brother was shot?
We left from the scene, but we were instructed not to return to the area. Let the hyena eat the corpse.
And what, if anything, did you do next?
The community organized themselves, and they give money to the people who were there, and they ask them to give permission to bury him.
Was your brother ultimately buried?
They buried him in the valley, right next to the wall. That's all they let them do.
Can you please pick up the photo and indicate where exactly your brother was buried?
They let them dig wall in the valley and bury him there, right there.
I'd like to show the witness what has been marked as exhibit number 7. Mr. Matar, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
What is it?
It's the graveyard. It doesn't show very clear, but it's the graveyard of the 8 people that were massacred that day in Arabsiyo.
Is this the same location as the cemetery that you pointed out in exhibit number 6?
Yes.
And how do you know that it contains the bodies of 8 people?
We dig from the location, all 8 people, some other time. And I was present when it was buried.
You mentioned earlier that you saw your brother Abdi at some point.
The only time I saw it was the day that they brought us to Gibeley.
And can you describe once again that moment when you saw him?
It was in the afternoon, the day that they transported us to Gibeley. It was very, very ugly. He was a man that was tortured, and he has a lot of burns on his body.
When's the last time you saw him before that moment?
The last time it was about 2 months prior to that. An estimated could be 3 months, yes. I haven't seen him for 4 months. 2 months that we were in jail, and the 2 months prior to that I haven't seen him for 4 months.
Right. So the last time that he saw him, before he saw him on the military vehicle, can he describe his physical appearance?
He was well fit. He was a handsome person. He was a tall man like me. He was strong.
And then when you saw him on that military vehicle after the arrest, how did he look?
He was a dead man. He was walking skeleton. He had burns on his body, and he was very weak.
Did he tell you about his treatment when he was detained?
Yes.
Did he say where it happened?
Yes, they burned him in Gibeley.
Mr. Matar, I'd like to show you what has been marked as exhibit number 8. Correction, what has been marked as plaintiff's exhibit number 8. Mr. Matar, do you recognize this image?
Well, yes, I know.
And can you identify the person in this image?
Yes, I know that person.
How do you know this person?
That's the person that I know by Tuke.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of what Tuke looked like in the 1980s?
Yes.
And can you describe what Mr. Ali or Tuke is wearing in this photo?
He's wearing the camouflage dress that the Somali National Military used to wear.
Good afternoon, Mr. Madar.
Good afternoon.
I would just like to clarify several of the points that you made in direct examination this morning. You basically have lived in, except for the time you were in Ethiopia, you lived in this Arabsiyo area virtually your entire life. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you taught school, primary school, up until 1988?
Yes.
And then when you came back from the time that you were in a refugee camp in Ethiopia, you became a farmer, correct?
Yes.
The events, traumatic events for you, and I'm sorry that you experienced some bad events in 1988, the traumatic events for you that you experienced in 1988, did you write down your accounts of what happened to prepare you to testify today?
I recorded in my brain, and I still have them in my brain. They are programmed there.
Okay. So I'm going to phrase that question another way. Is it your testimony on oath today that you never wrote down any of the events that you've testified about this morning?
I never wrote with my own hand.
Aren't you aware that there is a commission in Hargeisa that has made efforts to document grievances against the Somali National Army in the period of the late 1980s?
They exist, but I don't have any relation with them.
Okay. You were very specific about events that happened more than 30 years ago. Is it your testimony that, for instance, your account that there were 31 people in the jail room in Gebele is based solely on your memory from that period? Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Okay. And the testimony that you gave about the proceedings that you described under a tree, where you made statements like, quote, there was no opportunity to ask a continuance, end quote. Are those your words, or are those words that were suggested to you by somebody else?
It's from me. I was there.
You traveled here with at least 2 witnesses who work for the government of Somaliland, as it's called. Correct?
No.
Are you concerned that there might be some reporting back to that government about the evidence that you're giving here today?
Why would it be?
You never saw my client, Yusuf Abdi Ali, speak orders to kill any civilians, did you?
What I saw was that he released his soldiers to the locals, and they were harming the locals, and they were coming from his
That
base.
wasn't my question. Well, you repeat what he said, and then I'll... did he say anything else?
Yeah, I saw his forces, soldiers coming out of the compound, and they were released to the community. That's what I saw.
My question to you, and it calls for a yes or a no. You personally did not see or hear Colonel Ali make any order to his soldiers to kill or harm civilians? Did you? Yes or no?
Colonel, with his own hand, no.
Right? Nothing further.